I'm Ashley Nguyen DeWitt. I am an animation and video game voiceover casting and voice director, as well as a musician and actor and kind of a jack of all trades.
Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over. Thank you for coming on. Ashley, first of all, congratulations on the Emmy. And, that's a massive deal. We are, as a community, so proud of you. And me personally, very proud.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it was crazy because, the show that we won for Ada Twist Scientist won Outstanding Preschool Animated Series. So we won that series Emmy, which was just so validating and wonderful because it was the first series that I got to cast and voice direct on my own. So
fun fact, my children love that show so much. They watch it all the time, and I brought the kids on to say hello to you, and last time we talked. But congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're really excited about it. We're just happy that kids are learning science and they like it. So
what does it mean to be Vietnamese to you?
Oh, wow. So what it means to be Vietnamese to me, that's an interesting and complicated question, right? Especially because it's Black History Month. I am half Black, half Vietnamese. So I would say it's something like what it means to be Vietnamese to me is something that I've struggled with throughout my life. I would say just kind of trying to figure out what either side of my identity means, but I would say that as of late, being Vietnamese has given me a sense of community. I would say during the pandemic, especially at the beginning of pandemic, I was trying to find something. I was trying to find a place, people that I can relate to, people that I could talk to while being isolated with my husband, but people outside of our relationship to just talk to. So I leaned really heavily into Clubhouse, and I ended up finding the Vietnamese community there, and specifically like Vietnamese in entertainment. And those groups really just kind of welcomed me and helped me find the sense of community that I was looking for growing up. So right now it's just like to me, it's a place of support.
And it is, and it's turning into that, like, as we're evolving as a community especially in Los Angeles here, the entertainment community within the Vietnamese space, it's popping, it's going off.
Yes, it is. It
definitely is. We're so connected, and I think we are known throughout. Like if you go to Sundance, if you go to any of these film festivals and music events, we are kind of known for being very unified as a group, as a culture compared to other Asians.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I definitely have felt that too, because I feel like as soon as I was discovered by the community, they were like, "Oh, you're one of us. Please come." And I'm like, "Yes." And it's really hard too because that is something that I've always struggled with, is finding kind of just like a place, a sense of a group of people where there is support. So I'm really just happy that now, especially at this point in my career and this kind of point in my life, that I am finding that.
Before we get into how your parents met,
I
want to give a shout out to our dear friend Mary Goodchild.
Yes, Mary, my love.
Yes. Oh. And Mary and I have known each other for a long time, and it was so mind-blowing to see that you two are friends. But it just shows that LA is a big place, but not really. It's kind of a small place when you think about it.
Yeah. Mary and I, we met. So after I graduated college, I was part of the Independent Shakespeare Company that did Free Shakespeare in Griffith Park. That does Free Shakespeare in Griffith Park, I should say. And Mary was a company member, and we ended up being in a fake band together one year, and where we had to play twins in a fake band. And if anybody knows Mary, we do not look alike. But we are, we are twins, and honestly, that experience just brought us super, super close together, and we've been, pretty much besties for a decade.
Very cool. Well, shout out to Mary.
Yeah.
So how did your parents meet?
My parents, okay, so my parents met because my father's the police officer, right? All my life. And in the 80s, I'd say mid to late 80s, my mother moved from LA to Northern California and somehow ended up being a dispatcher for I believe it was East Palo Alto PD. And my dad was a cop. And the joke was that he was the only cop that my mom was nice to over the radio. And she says it's because he was a good cop. And I
Mm.
also think it was because he was cute. Like, so, yeah, that's how they met. They met at work.
And your mother's African American, right?
Yes, she's African
And
American.
your father came to the United States very early, actually, right?
Yeah, yeah, 1967. So
Wow.
very early. He was young. I believe it was like April or something of 1967.
And I
Yeah.
think that we had discussed that he at one point was a Marine before he was a cop.
Yeah, he was a Marine. He was actually the first Vietnamese Marine, so first Vietnamese born Marine in the United States Marine Corps since the fall of Saigon. So he's the very first.
You know, I want to know if you and your father ever have discussions about Black Lives Matter and all the police work that he has to go through, and all of this stuff that's been going on in our country. Do you guys have that discussion with him being police former police person?
I would say that we have discussed it, um, but it's such a delicate subject, especially because I I did grow up in law enforcement, right? And even on my mother's side, like my uncle was a police officer for LA and Inglewood and like all of that, and like down here, and so like on both sides there's law enforcement, right? And I do have thoughts. I do have like very particular thoughts about how things are now, and the state of policing now. But I will say that like my father is one of those types of cops that really did it for good, really just to serve and protect and make sure that people are safe. Um, and I do respect that about him, and I do respect his opinions about certain things, but we are on the same page that there are issues within the system, that as the years have gone and how I would say the requirements to become a police officer have been a bit lax because they're hurting for bodies like um, that. It's not the same as it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
And your father and I are probably going to have a discussion very soon. And
Yeah.
shout out to your dad and
Yeah.
the audience that will be coming. And the reason why I am really interested in his story is obviously because former Marine,
Hmm.
came very early to the United States, ended up
Yeah.
being a police officer and working very interesting beats. And I think that discussion about having a Vietnamese person join the police force so early on, after the war, is a very
Yeah.
interesting perspective that I really can't wait to hear.
Yeah, and I'm sure that he'll have a lot of really interesting and thought-provoking things to say about that. Yeah. Because he dealt with a lot, so.
How did you get involved with music? And then we'll talk about, performing and voiceover
Yes,
work, but how did
yeah.
you get into music?
So, I grew up in a very musical household. My mother sang all my life. My mother's a singer, has sung all my life. My father loves music and always constantly playing music to us when we were kids. So, my mom and I used to sing a lot when we were little. She would sing to us every single night. And then like every Saturday, my dad would blast music to wake us up over the sound system in
Wow.
our house. And so he was the one who would share like all different types of like um, stuff from like Motown, the Beatles, to like Bob Marley, to Queen, to like Tower Park, and I'm from the East Bay, so like a lot of like Bay Area sort of like funk, um, that sort of stuff, punk music. Santa Claus is the one who gave me Battle of Los Angeles, Rage Against the Machine, but Santa was also my dad. My dad gave me like one of the most anti-authoritarian like CDs of albums of all time, But like it's just because he wanted to expand my knowledge and just wanted me to like listen and be happy. So like I've been just doing it all my life. I've been singing since my mother used to joke since before I was out of the womb. So
Yeah. If anybody is listening to this conversation about music with Ashley, please go to Spotify or Apple Music and find the track Rise Again. I heard that track before I ever met you. It's almost iconic for me. Like it's at that level, right? It's and I just don't want to, blow through people's expectations, but it is such a well-written song, well sung, well performed. It's something that I want to actually talk about because how much soul that goes into a song like Rise Again really depends on where you grew up musically, not only geographically, but musically in our heads. Whether you sing at a church, a Black gospel church, or wherever you come from, that flavor will be missing if you didn't grow up a certain way. And I don't know how to say it without, coloring it more, but can you talk to that experience?
Well, what's so interesting is that I would sing at home. That is where I sing. Where I learned how to sing, where I learned a lot of my intonation is from listening to singers and mimicking. That was something that I did a lot, was mimic. Or I would sing with my mom. My mom we got a karaoke machine when I was in elementary school, and my mom and I would sing karaoke every night or on the weekends, just the two of us. And a lot of just the way that I have kind of put together my voice, I guess, stolen from everybody that I listened to. So it's just kind of like an amalgamation of all of these great singers that I leaned into. So like I was obsessed with Sarah Vaughan and like Billie Holiday and the Ella Fitzgerald. I was obsessed with Celine Dion. I was obsessed with Whitney Houston, Gladys Knight, Jeff Buckley even. Like just like that, his really just nice, clean, bright, like big sound, dramatic, Pink Floyd. Like I was listening to all of these things, Freddie Mercury, these different voices and vibratos and things, and I would take what I liked and kind of just married them into how I sound today. And I would say that for Rise Again, that song came to me right when I needed it, right? It was at the end of 2020. So we'd been in lockdown for a good while at that point. Probably a little bit over 6 months. And my friend Alana Daw-Fonseca was writing this song for the King Arthur Baking Company. And they were doing their rebranding holiday campaign, and they wanted this like timeless sounding song. And so she wrote these words, and I was the person that she thought of because she wanted to have like a woman of color be the singer, be the voice of this moment, of this movement. And so I was really just singing the demo, and then she pitched me with the demo, and they wanted me to sing for the commercial. And then she was like, you know what, we should produce a whole song. So we did the entire song and we released it as like a single. And it was kind of at that weird crux in my life where I really just hadn't been doing music a lot because I was sad, because I was in lockdown and I just couldn't pull myself into doing something that I really enjoyed. And like the fact that the first line is, don't it feel like the end? Like that's what I was feeling, and when I first sang it, and it was just everything that I was feeling and all the emotions, and I realized as I was singing it that like there are probably a lot of people who feel the same. And it's been 3 years now, and like the commercial comes every holiday season at this point. It's been 3 years, and I still get like messages from people being like, it's that time of the year again, or this song is really important to me, or I've been listening to this song all week because I've been having like something really bad happen to me and this is pulling me out of it. And it's just like, I'm just so thankful to, be the voice to that, and that people have that. So,
I,
yeah.
I told you I hate to compare you to these two powerhouses, but Amy Winehouse and Adele
Yeah.
come to mind when I listen to Rise Again. And I'm a big fan of Andre Day's song, was it
Mhm.
Rise Up?
Yeah, rise
And
up.
I'll be honest with you, the power, the vocals on Rise, uh, your song Rise Again is like even bigger than
Oh,
Andre Day's
thank you.
song. Yeah,
That's crazy. Don't say it
I
now.
swear to God, that's how I feel about it.
Oh
And
man.
and just it's up there with the pantheon of Rise Up and Andre Day's song and Rise Again. I mean, it's like for me, it's like those two songs lift me when I listen to Rise Again all the time, because I
Yeah.
I love hearing it.
Thank you. And I feel like it's really interesting too because I'm someone and I feel like in 2020 for me, because of Black Lives Matter, because of George Floyd, like that was really, really hard for me. And then compound that with the next year of Stop Asian Hate, like that was just like, so like both sides of my, both sides of me
Mhm.
are just being ripped to shreds by this country, right? Just really just feeling helpless and hopeless. And so like when Stop Asian Hate and like all those fundraisers started happening, like a lot of the community found Rise Again. And so like on Clubhouse, I would sing it for like fundraisers for that, and it kind of became synonymous with that. And so like I'm just happy that people find meaning and enjoyment, in it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful track. It's just really amazing. Now,
Thank you.
a lot of people don't really get to live their dreams because it's singing. It's all these things that are abstract, but getting to carry out art and making money of it and making a living out of it. What led to that mindset where you are today? Because you are able to really float in the world of making money from your voice and in
Yeah.
very different dimensions, not only just music, but you know, talk to me a little bit about the voice acting and the voice casting and voice directing world.
Yeah. I mean, like, so for me, it's something it's a long con, right? It's something I've been planning for a long time. And I didn't realize I was planning it until like I set myself up for it. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, that makes sense. So I was a theater major. I went to Cal State Northridge. And how I got into voice over and voice casting, because I got into voice casting before I really even got into voice acting, was there was a woman who came to my school to do a masterclass to talk about voice casting and voiceover. And when she was done with her masterclass, I asked her if she needed an intern for the summer because I didn't want to go home. And I was like, this is interesting. Like, do you need an intern for the summer? And she said, yeah. And I worked for them unpaid for an entire summer, but I got to learn the world of like commercial voice casting and like what it meant, like how they found actors, how they talked to agents. And the company was also a school, so I got to work in their school, and I ended up being like a sound engineer, so I could kind of like see the technical aspect of it as well as like seeing people in the booth and seeing people being directed and that. And so I did that between my junior and senior year of college, and then when I graduated, they offered me a paid position there, and I said I will work part time because I am a theater major and I want to be an actress. So I want to try to pursue that, and I was offered to be in the Independent Shakespeare Company. So I did part time Shakespeare in the park, and then other part time like working for this voice casting company. And then I kind of just hopped around. I did an after school program for high school that taught uh, acting and singing and dance and leadership, which was another fun way to get paid to like be creative and do that. But it's just because I didn't quite want to settle yet until I realized one day I was working for a boutique casting company and I ended up being a booth director, like directing actors for their auditions in the booth, like actually giving direction and them listening to me and responding. And I realized that I liked that. And it was something that married my theater degree because I know how to talk to actors and I understand like the way to like speak within that world. And how actors react and how certain actors would like how to read actors. But it also gave me the choice to be even also pragmatic, right? So like I get to make certain choices and I get to do things and like have that power of like, this is an actor that I'm going to push along because they're good. This is an actor that even though they're requested, that's a bad audition, I'm not going to give that to you, and I can make that decision.
Right.
But like it got to the point where like I wanted to be in like after booth directing, I started directing like more animated stuff for auditions, and I realized I really liked cartoons, and I've always liked cartoons and video games. So like I applied to work for DreamWorks from there, and at that point, because I thought my day job was theater acting and my part-time job was like voice casting, which is like such a wackadoo mindset. But I was like, so just like, I'm going to be an actor, right? That about 4 years into me working in voice casting, like I applied for DreamWorks and they immediately called me in for an interview and I got hired because I had 4+ years of experience on my resume at that point. But my mindset was like, now I'm going to go into like animation casting and see what this is, but I'll still try to act. But once I got to the corporate lifestyle, I was like, oh no, this is a career.
Wow.
I got a career job. And so like I worked there for a couple of years and I was a talent relations coordinator and casting coordinator. So what I did was I ran quite a few shows, the recording room of it. So I would do a lot of scheduling. I was the liaison between the studios, the agents and actors, the casting team, as well as like the producers and the executives. So I was kind of like a catch-all, doing everything while also being in the recording room for that show for every record, where I got to basically shadow the best voice directors in the business. Like I got to shadow Andrea Romano, I got to shadow like Sam Riegel and Katie McWayne and Christy Reed, who eventually became like my mentor. And it's a person who like took me under their wing and helped me get the opportunities to be where I am today. So like when I was leaving DreamWorks, I reached out to them and we talked and they offered me to be their assistant and they would let me shadow them, meet other studios, and start pitching me for projects to kind of teach me how to be a voice director, because there's no real way to do it. It's kind of everyone has their own way of doing it. And so, they're the one that introduced me to Chris Nee, which is how I got onto Ada Twist. And like, which is crazy because that was my first show and it was produced by the Obamas. Like, which is like, and then like she introduced me to Rebecca Sugar, who did Steven Universe, and I cast and voice directed the anti-racism initiative for them in 2020. I got to work with one of my favorite cartoon properties of all time, and that was A Dream. And then from there, it's just kind of all word of mouth. My reputation kind of preceded me at that point.
And that's the thing too, I think, when young people are getting into these abstract fields where there's no real career path defining way, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have to spend that first year interning for free and working for free to learn everything you possibly can about this field, so it can potentially open up doors for you in the future.
Of course, I will say I should have gotten paid for that summer. The amount of work that I was doing and like what I was doing, I was like, I should have got paid. But I will say, yeah, it is about the grind, and it's something that I have spoken to like recent graduates about. It's like, yes, you were the top of your class, and you're the golden child of this microcosm. But when you go out into the real world, you're going to have to start from the bottom. You're not going to be a director from the jump.
Yeah.
You're going to have to be a director's assistant first for a while. But again, it's like you hear about mine and my sort of trajectory, and it's like I started here and then I bounced over here and then I got into this place, and like now, and like I was a voice director on Tiny Toons for Amblin, which is crazy. And like I was doing stuff for Cartoon Network, and I direct for like Disney. I would direct for like all the big boys. But I started when I was 20, and I'm 20. I'm 33 now. So it took me 30 yeah, it took me about 13 years to get to this point that I'm at right now. And really it took me 10 years, like a whole decade, for someone to even give me the chance to cast and direct on my own. So like I'm young, but I've been working
Yeah.
really hard.
And that's really what it takes in Hollywood to
Mm-hmm.
get that sort of, and I'm sure it, a lot of people don't have the support from our families and stuff like that. And it
Yeah.
takes a tremendous amount of faith in yourself. And then, people around you are kind of, helping you facilitate your life to get to
Yeah.
where you need to go.
And I think that I was really lucky, right? My parents are my number one fans. Like, again, when I was in college doing all these shows, I did cabaret where I was like in like lingerie or whatever. My dad, front and center, even my Banoy, like, like front and center watching me, like, do cabaret, right? Like when they would drive to come see Shakespeare in the park, I would see my dad dead asleep like from backstage until I'm on stage, and then his ears trained to me. Like so supportive. Same thing with like my mom, like just so supportive of like me being in the arts, me being in music, just wanting me to be happy. And I think that a lot of it comes down to is like they're both very artistic people. Like my dad was a photography major. My mom again loved theater and music and art as well, and like really just kind of gave that to my brother and I. And so they worked so hard in their positions to give us the support to be able to
Yeah.
do what we want. But also they instilled a lot of work ethic in me, to like strive to be the best. Right. And that's such a like a buzz phrase, sort of like a parent of color buzz phrase. You have to be 100 times better than your white counterparts to break even or something,
Yeah.
something like that. And so I took that when I learned that in elementary school, and I ran with it. And I've gotten to the point where like now I have made my career where like I don't work in a corporate structure and I can make my own schedule. So I can take those projects, like if I audition for a voice acting role and I book it, I can go do that. And then the next day I'll be voice directing, or then the next day I have a day off,
Oh,
or
what
I'll
a,
be like writing, and I can just do that. And like my rate and like the way that I've scheduled myself help supplement my lifestyle. My husband also has a full-time job. That's nice.
yeah.
So like we support each other. And I will also say too that a lot of the big leap into me being my own entity, like leaving corporate animation, was the support that my husband gave me.
That makes such a big difference, right?
It really, really did. Because like there was a point where he was like, you need to be happy doing what
Mhm.
you want to do, and there's so much more to you. And so like like leap, I'm here to support you. um, and so I'm very, very, shout out to Joe DeWitt for being the best.
What a blessing. What a
Yeah.
true blessing to have a spouse really support the work that you do.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, um, can you sort of talk a little bit about the idea of a person of color, a female,
Yeah.
working in a predominantly white dominated space? Like, how does that all work? How do you feel about all that?
What's so funny? I grew up in a white predominated space. Like I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in the San Ramon Valley, which is a very like
Yeah.
affluent area, I would say. And I will say that like I was moved there, right? Like I went to elementary school in San Leandro. My dad was a San Leandro cop. We were in like that Oakland side, and then one of my elementary school teachers, probably my kindergarten teacher, told my dad like should probably put her in a school that will challenge her. So we moved to San Ramon, right? And I was challenged in those schools. I definitely was like challenged, and the curriculum was different, and that's a whole other thing. But I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and so like I was used to dealing with white egos all my life. And so being in this space, in this position, I think especially because of like the way things are, just kind of the way the universe has been in the past like 5 years, and the way that things are moving culturally, and just kind of how people of color are taking up more space, especially in the entertainment industry, and are like given more opportunities. I'd say that like I was really lucky to have two particular people. I would say Christy Reed, who is my mentor, and Chris Nee, who was the creator of Ada Twist. And they're both white women who wanted me to succeed and wanted to give me the opportunity, and was like, I want you to have this opportunity because I feel like it's really important to have a voice such as yours in this position on this side of the glass, especially on projects where there are actors that reflect you on the other side. And just for a need of authenticity, like it's different. And so because I have been able to navigate those types of personalities just growing up, coming into a record room as a director is fine for me, because it's my room and I'm the one that's running it, and I have that confidence in me to like
yeah. So at the end of the day, I want to know, is it really a detriment, as a person of color, as a female, but are we able to really punch through if we're just fucking badass, right?
I think so, yeah. Right? I mean, I think so. Yeah. I feel like I feel like a lot of it is confidence, and a lot of it is just like
competence,
not even
right?
Competence. It's competence. It's confidence. Mostly competence too, because it's like there are a lot of incompetent white people in very high positions, who've gotten there just because they could, yep. Right? But I think that for like people of color, especially women of color, competence is a huge thing. Like you have to be able to back your shit up.
You gotta know your shit, yeah.
Yeah, and you have to be confident in your job, and that you came in and that you're hired for a reason, and that like that's it, right? And I'm a director, so like I'm directing a scene. I'm directing these actors. I'm the one that's directing the room. So I do work with white showrunners, but I have never felt in any sort of way that like me being female or being a person of color would ever make them not listen to me in any sort of way, because they hired me initially because they trust my ability. So I think for me it's a little different also because I guess I just don't have that chip in my brain that makes me worried about what they think when I'm doing things. And I will also say too that like being in the room as a person of color, a woman of color, is nice too, because when there are moments of like microaggression, or if there are moments where there are things said where I'm like, no, we're not going to do that, or that feels weird, or I'm like, that seems like it could be construed as racist, right? Like I can call that out and be like, how about we take a step back, and if we really need to pick it up, we'll pick it up later in pickups.
But I also have a feeling that when you do call people out, it's not directly called out in that way, or do you? Like, oh, that's racist.
No, I mean, it depends. I mean, there's sometimes where like I'll be like, maybe that's not the best way of saying that.
And then how do you interject or inject your way of saying, because you're like, can you give it a little bit more hood? I mean, you're not going to talk like
no. You never ask, because that's offensive, right? What does that mean, hood? Right? That right there, you're asking for a stereotype, and that is absolutely offensive.
Exactly. And you and I had this conversation before, so you brought up really awesome ways to to direct your actor or the people in the room?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times with those sort of directions, it's not a direction. Like what you're asking is like a character trait. And really what I need for you from you, and this is you like empirical,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
producer, is to be specific. So it's like if someone is like, I want it to be more urban and more hood, I'll be like, okay, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
And if they get flustered, it's just like then you're trying to ask for a stereotype, right? And or if they lean into it, they're like, more urban, and I'll be like, why don't you give us an example?
Oh shit.
Or I'll be like, can you give me a line read? And they'll be like, no, and I'll be like, all right, well then we'll pick it up later. Or I'll be like, give me a second, let me think about it, and we'll come back to it later. And then I try to internalize a little bit what they're asking because you can't like I'm still a director working for clients, right?
Right.
Like there and I will say that this is happening less and less now because people know better. Or they should. But I would say that for me, I would try to find a more specific adjective than just urban or hood. Maybe they wanted you to come a little bit more aggressive, lower in your voice. Maybe they want you to sit back into it. Maybe they want you to lean into the culture a little bit, lean into like the culture of the world, of the neighborhood you're in, like that sort of thing, as opposed to being like, do it more black.
Yeah. And
Or more Asian,
right.
or more accented or whatever. I'm like, do whatever authentically feels nice to you, but I need you to like lean back into it, be a little bit meaner, and maybe that'll hurt. But there are certain ways to direct an actor without offending them.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, this is a great subject because how could you get to certain characters that are people of color, but you have white people directing? And how do you get that authenticity if you don't have the language to direct them? If
Yeah.
you don't have that EQ to really carry out the subtle, the nuances of the conversation.
And I also think too, it's just like the way that brains associate things as we get older and the way that generation and the way that slang has changed too. Like I do use a lot of slang. I always feel like a old head, right?
Yeah.
Whenever I'm like directing these kids and I'm like, no cap, for real though. But I try to incorporate something that they will identify. So
Right.
if I was talking to an actor of color and I was like, so like the Beyonce of scientists just walk in and your friend is very familiar, and then with that person, how would you react? Like, just being like, this is Beyonce, this is like a cultural point, like a cultural perspective, pop culture, something that makes sense to get a performance out of it, when like adjectives don't work. So I do use a lot of situational things. I try to, sometimes a lot of times with kids, I use things from their own lives. Like I could give a whole directing seminar on like, how do you get things from actors from young to old? But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
feel like like I can identify a lot better with with actors of color in that sort of way, because I'll be like, has your mama ever, and they're like, yes, and I'm like, great. So that feeling, but that's like, I know that I can say
yeah.
that because we identify, like we've built a certain level of trust already that I can be like this, and they'd be like, yes.
And, and
um
and that is very powerful because when we think of third culture kids, right, we think
yeah,
of like a Vietnamese American cultures coming together to make a third culture. But when we have a mix of Vietnamese and African American, we're bringing that together to form some fluidity within even the white culture. So you have a toolbox, a plethora of tools to
yeah,
really talk to, the whole gamut. You have Asians, you have African Americans, white kids.
I know, and it's so funny, and me, the way that my voice generally sounds, I sound like a white girl, to
Yeah.
be honest,
Yeah.
straight up. And it's so funny too because I've had it when I was assisting, right, in offices, like I would talk to agents, and I remember there's one like I don't exactly remember what they said, but it was offensive to Asians, right? They were making some offhand joke. And I was like, dude, you do know that I'm Asian, right? And he was like, oh, I was like, we're Facebook friends. My last name is Nguyen, very clearly. And then he was like, and then he flustered, and I was like, and I'm also black too. Like, but it's just like, it has helped me kind of, navigate
Many
through
different
life. And I
scenarios.
mean, there are different, like, there's a lot of properties like what is it? Sorry to Bother You is a great movie about that entire situation of just like code switching and that sort of thing. But I feel like I'm code switch. Sometimes I code switch in my own family, too, because of like how I move between the different sides of my family. It's all it's all complicated.
Going back to the whole family thing, I wanted to ask you too, is the African American side and the Vietnamese side, how close are they and how much of each other's world do they understand?
I would say that, like, so on my dad's side, I have my grandmother and my uncle, and then my mom is one of seven. So, I'd say growing up, like Thanksgiving is a huge thing for my family. It's
Yeah.
generally like on my mom's side, we all get together. There's like 50 plus of us. But Benoit's always invited, right? And everyone cooks and stuff. So Benoit would bring egg rolls, and that was like the big hit, and they were always gone immediately, and that was like a huge thing. So like Benoit would like bring like cha and like and just like bring a whole plate, and like she would teach me how to make it. We would like make a bunch of it and like and bring it, and like that was a way of them sharing. Like that's probably the best example of like the melding of cultures for me and my family. And like they love each other. Like my Benoit will send my grandmother. So my Benoit, I think she's 84. I want to say, I'm sorry, Benoit, if I'm wrong. And then my granny is 97.
Wow.
So,
You got the genes to
yeah,
heavy
yeah.
genes.
And so, and I'm also sorry if that number is wrong, but it's approximate. Yeah, I think it's right. Um, and so Benoit would send granny books, like holidays, like they would exchange things, they would write, it's just very, very sweet support of each other. And like they sat together at my wedding. We sat them together, and it was just really nice too to have both of them there. And yeah, like I would say now, contemporary, they support each other enough. I don't know what it was like
Yeah, in the
in the
early days.
beginning in the 80s when things are different.
Yeah.
But
But I think there's also an advantage with your Banoi and your father coming so early too,
yeah,
because when you come in 75, you come in 80, 85, as you progress, there's more Vietnamese people here, and it's unfortunately more cliquish, right?
yeah, yeah,
So, but if you're coming in 67 and you're this woman and her two sons and you are forced to confront reality in a very different way because you have no support and no sort of like community, talking through your
right.
ear about like, oh, we got to do this certain way and do that a certain.
No, so she immigrated. They immigrated in '67, and like she got married eventually to my grandpa Don, and I believe, and my father can correct me if I'm wrong, that she sent him over there to bring her family here,
Oh,
to like help bring them here. So, like her family did end up being here eventually, like bringing them over here. I don't know the specifics particularly about like how what that story is, but I mean, isn't it badass that she just like came here and like made a way, like owned a restaurant at some point, like
crazy when you think about that.
translator. She translated for the FBI. She retired as a translator for the FBI.
What? Wait, she
Yeah.
was a translator for the FBI for how many years?
A long time, probably since, yeah, like I was in elementary school through, she retired probably when I was in college. So like a good over a decade.
So she was
Or
in the FBI on the translating side.
yeah, she worked for the FBI on the translating side. Yeah, I told you my family's crazy. We got a lot of
All
stories
right. We gotta hit
all
up your
mixed
grandma.
up.
We gotta hit up your grandmother, get her on the show. We gotta get her on the podcast. That is some crazy, interesting shit to me. I'm like, okay, your dad's very interesting, but like, I think Bano is a little bit more like, all right, let me
They
get her.
both, and it's kind of built. It's so funny. It's because it's like it starts with Benoit, and then it's like my dad and his life, and then mine and my life, and then who knows like what
Yeah,
what
yeah.
else and stuff. But I feel like we're just kind of all we all work hard, and we all just kind of try to do what we love, and try to do it like we can
Go
to
hard.
survive and be happy. Yeah, we go hard.
Go
So.
hard. Now, you play 4 different instruments.
Yeah,
Speaking of
I
going
do.
hard,
I pick up instruments every now and then, and I try to play them to the best of my abilities.
how did
Yeah.
that happen? How did 4 instruments go down with your voice?
I think
That's 5 instruments, by the way.
so
Just
I so when I was a kid, they put us in like piano, right? And I was really bad at learning from a teacher, like a piano teacher. And I think the piano teacher that they had me with was particularly mean. And so like I quit and I just started playing by ear. My brother is a violinist, brilliant little violinist, like from elementary school. I was always so jealous of how well he could play the violin.
yeah.
So I kind of got back into piano too because I was like, I want to play too. And then like when I was around 15, I got really into like punk. And I wanted to play guitar, and so my dad got me my first guitar, which is behind me
Yeah.
somewhere. I still have it. It was a Johnson. It's like sparkly black Johnson. I think he got from like Target or something. And I was like really into like play. So I like learned how to play a bunch of Green Day songs because that was around the time that Green Day came back. And I was like really into like punk, and I had like a Green Day cover bit. It was just a whole thing. And so I started playing, and I started doing the singer-songwriter thing. So I started like writing my own songs, and I also dabbled in piano because I still remembered how to do that. And then when I started working with the Shakespeare Company, they found out I can sing and kind of play instruments. So I started playing bass for them. And so I played bass, and I helped like, compose music for their production of Romeo and Juliet in like 2015, where we
Wow.
had like a live like prog punk rock band on stage, and we underscored it like it was a movie. And it was like really, really cool. But I was playing bass, and it was the first time that I'd like played bass in front of people, and I was playing bass and singing, and I feel like playing instruments and singing just kind of came to me. And so like I picked up ukulele at that point because around that time all the girls were singing with the ukuleles, so I figured why not me too.
Yeah.
And so like I did that, and then the year that I was getting married was 2019. My friend Becky, who is just like this insane jazz singer but also like punk, like badass, asked me if I wanted to play bass in her 60s garage punk band for a tour in Europe for 2 weeks.
What?
And that
And
was 2 months before my wedding, and I said yes.
you have to,
But
right?
well, also I hung up and I turned to my husband and I was like, Becky just asked me to go on tour to Europe for 2 weeks. And he was like, when? And I was like, July. And he was like, we're getting married in September. I was like, yes. And he was like, if you don't do it, you're gonna resent me forever. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, you got to do it.
yes. So I did it.
But how proficient was your bass playing at that point?
I mean, I learned all the songs really well, and I got to groove on my own, and like I knew kind of where everything was, and I can just play around, and it's punk, so it's like
Yeah.
I could do it. But I mean, we were playing like the Cramps. We were playing like this song. One of the songs we were playing was Bikini Girl, or yeah, Bikini Girls with Machine Guns. And the bass, it's so bass heavy, and it's like boom, 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 and like that's what I had to do. And it's just like a rockabilly like bass. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm learning this. And I just learned it for the song, and it became muscle memory. And I think for me, a lot of like instrument playing is all muscle
Muscle
memory.
memory.
Yeah, and like now I can like understand, like if you say play an A chord like on a piano, I know where that is because
Yeah.
I've been putzing around for so long that it's absorbed, but like I'm not formally trained. And for singing, my mom's the one who taught me how to sing.
That's amazing. That's an insane story about
Yeah.
what is the ultimate game goal for you?
Oh, like end
Acting,
game, like what I want.
singing. Yeah, what does the
You
end
know,
game look like?
I ask this. The end game looks like me in a fisherman boat in Hawaiian, like just off in the sunset doing nothing, like on a beach somewhere. That's the end game. Retired.
Have you been
But
to Vietnam?
I have, yeah. Benoit took us in 2014. And by us, I mean Benoit went with her grandchildren, and like my aunt and uncle came too, but brought her grandchildren back to Vietnam, and that was her first time back since they left in the
And
60s.
what was it like? What was your experience like with, with your Banoi? But, obviously people in Vietnam are not used to seeing, you know,
No, I mean it was really cute because so we were on like one of those tours. So we did like Cambodia, Thailand, and we ended in Vietnam.
yeah,
And we went all over. Like we went to a bunch of places in Vietnam. So we were in Hoi An, we went to Halong Bay, we went to Hue, we were in Saigon, we were in Hanoi, we were in wherever, like we went all the way up. And it was crazy because like I'm the grandchild that I always want to make sure my grandparents are okay. And so I will be with you, like on your hip. So I didn't do a lot of like exploring of like nightlife or anything. I just kind of like stuck with Benoit. And it was a really interesting just to kind of see her process, being back and while also wanting to share, this country with us. And I would say that a lot of the reactions of people they were proud of us for going back with our grandma. Like a lot of people were just like proud of us for being there, and just like saying how beautiful we are, or that I look like her, or like and just being really supportive of the fact that we were supporting our
yeah,
grandmother
grandmother.
back there,
That's
which was
special to Vietnamese people.
yeah. And I was always worried, right? Because I didn't know. I didn't know how I would be perceived because I very much I present as African American, with my natural hair, full afro, right?
Mm.
My natural hair is a full afro. So like I didn't know how it would be perceived. And from that experience, it was very positive. Everyone was so nice and like just really cool with us. So
I'm
yeah.
glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much today for you spending the time to share all this stuff with me. I look forward to meeting you in person very soon and
Yeah.
hearing you sing live soon.
Hmm.
Thank you for accepting that, and I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Wonderful. Thank you so much once again, Ashley. We'll talk very soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. The Vietnamese is produced by Brittany Tran. Special thanks to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and comment. Please rate and give us a review wherever you find our podcasts.